Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, guests, IMechE members from the Thames Down Speakers Club, to this Institution of Mechanical Engineers event hosted by the Bedfordshire IMechE panel. My name is Philip Bridgman, and I'll be your host for this evening for this event. Before we get started, there's a few items of housekeeping. So all your microphones you'll find have been turned off. Please keep them so. And unusually, we do ask that you turn your cameras on so our speaker can actually gain feedback from your reactions during the talk. There will be a short Q&A session at the end. Please use the group chat as we go along through the talk to add your questions. And what will happen at the end during the Q&A, I will actually read the questions out to the speaker and get you some answers. The event is also going to be recorded and will be made available on the IMechE YouTube channel in due course. So if you want to see it again or you want to pass it on to your colleagues and friends, please do. So to the event. So public speaking is a skill often overlooked and feared by many. Throughout education and subsequent careers, we're often called upon to give presentations and speak at conferences and deliver large meetings. Many see this as an uncomfortable task to get through as quick as possible or avoid speaking engagements altogether. I've seen people hide behind lecterns, I've seen them sweat profusely, present in a monotone voice, or even drop their stack of notes in a disarray across the floor and can't go on without their notes. I've also seen overcomplicated slides with too much text and too many figures that no one can see, in effect death by PowerPoint. But how do you prepare? Where do you stand? What do you do with your hands? Where do you look? What do you say and how do you say it? Well, I'm pleased to have with us this evening Stewart Linford, an active member of Toastmasters Thames Down Speakers Club with decades of experience as a professional speaker and several TV appearances. Stewart is not only a professional speaker and a supreme storyteller, but also a fine furniture maker with clients including the Duke of Marlborough, the National Trust and Harrods, just to name a few. With awards for his furniture business, including Queen's Award for Enterprise. Stewart was presented to His Majesty Buckingham Palace and received a lengthy royal visit on his opening of his showroom in 2004. His other achievements, including being a liveryman for the Furniture Maker Company, Stewart was made a freeman of the City of London, giving him a license to drive sheep across Blackfriars Bridge. A privilege he has apparently availed himself of. There's got to be a story in there somewhere. For this event, Stewart Linford will share his top tips and tricks to improve your public speaking and presentation skills, and hopefully impart some humorous stories and anecdotes. Don't forget the sheep in there somewhere. So without further ado, and with a talk entitled Scared Speechless, the art of storytelling, I hand to Stewart Linford.
The things that people fear most. Number one, public speaking. Number two, death, which means that most people at a funeral would rather be in the coffin than delivering the eulogy. So the fear of public speaking, international coach Michael Neal made some striking observations about public speaking. Essentially, it's about feeling self-conscious. When you get up in front of an audience, you're very self-conscious. You're putting yourself in an unnatural place. So the key is to try and concentrate on the audience rather than on yourself. And Michael Neal, this international coach, famous coach, he actually filmed his audience on one occasion, and to see where they leaned in to absorb what he was saying and when they pulled back. So he's a very effective speaker. So if you can think it's not about you, it's about your audience. He met Princess Diana's voice coach, speaking coach, and his advice to Diana was, just talk to me. So fear of public speaking can, of course, be driven out largely by practice, especially in front of a live audience. The audience are pretty well with you. They're willing you on, and they want to be rewarded for the investment in the time they put in to watch you. So if you want to do practice, Toastmasters International Speaking Club meetings are there for all. Practice, practice, practice in front of supportive people. So a very warm welcome hello to all you esteemed members and guests of this august, venerable organisation, the Institute of Mechanical Engineers. And a very big thank you to Philippe, Bridgman and Alexander for their great work in making this Zoom presentation happen. So many thanks for joining me while I share with you my passion and journey, helping all of us to become better communicators. So effective public speaking is incredibly powerful. One individual having the ability to influence and move a few persons right up to entire nations, as we well know, from Churchill to Zelensky and from Hitler to Putin. Now, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. So try to make your opening remarkable, compelling, exciting, thought-provoking. Light a fire of enthusiasm for your speech amongst your audience, rather than bog them down with bucketfuls of data and text. Now, that stuff is important, but it will follow later when your audience naturally seeks more detail. So get your big picture across at the outset. My pleasant task today, mechanical engineers and very welcome guests, fellow Toastmasters, is to assist you get your ideas, discoveries, painstaking researches and passions conveyed in such a way that your audience will never forget your presentation. So public speaking is like many other disciplines. There are principles, really quite simple principles. These are learnt principles or skills. Once you have them, all it takes is practice, practice, practice. Practice in front of a mirror, your laptop, in front of your partner, and of course, a real audience, a Zoom audience, or in person. So the good news is that, yes, the art of effective communication is a learned skill. You don't have to be born John F. Kennedy to be a competent speaker and inspire your audience. You know, look at me. Effective communication skills are learned and used in every area of human endeavour. A learned skill, or as they say in Bristol, where I studied for my certificate of education, learned, that will help you advance your commercial projects to gain followers, supporters, disciples, and champions who we hope to influence the all-important accountants who open the purse strings. So let your dream become a commercial reality through the power to move people through public speaking. So how did I get into Toastmasters? Well, I was working in the showroom and my colleague, Keith Clark, was interested in expanding and improving his communication skills, particularly public speaking. And he went to Maidenhead Speakers in Berkshire, which is a Toastmasters club. And he said something quite remarkable happened. the task that the Toastmasters were given was the power to hold an audience. And a chap got up, they didn't know, he was there for the first time, he responded to this call to inspire an audience through oratory. And he got up, he had a suit on, and he said, I shouldn't be here. I was on the 82nd floor of Twin Towers. I shouldn't even be here. It's just a miracle that I escaped. It's just a complete fluke that I happened to be on that floor visiting my childhood friend Lindsay, who'd become a very successful banker in New York. And I happened to visit him on that day, never visited him before or since. And Lindsay and I, by an absolute miracle, escaped. But I'll never forget the sound of crunching concrete, the smell of aviation fuel, the screams, the experience. And we got out. The whole story's out there on the internet. So the audience is, now I didn't see this talk, but I heard about it from my colleague. Then he took the suit off. The audience were just totally transfixed with this. He took the suit off, and underneath was a bright red jumper. And he said, the ensuing years since Lindsay and I escaped, some things have happened, had some changes. I've been quite successful, got a nice job, lovely wife, nice kids, done all right, nice house. But Lindsay and I, something happened. We shared this experience that is unique and made an indelible impression on our psyche, both of us. At the age of 54, I made an amazing discovery about myself, that I've actually become gay. At which point he took the bright red jumper off, and underneath was a pink t-shirt with a medallion. And then he said, Maidenhead speakers, thank you for listening to my story. And everyone clapped. He sat down, but everyone was in raptures that this chap, the power to hold an audience, not by what he said, but his change of dress, his persona, the power of pause, how he really had a fascinating speech. So I joined Toastmasters from there 20 odd years ago, and I've been working to improve ever since. And of course, like you good people, we're all trying to learn, embrace this learning, and trying to improve as we go forward. So now let's get into what the principles are. Let me expand on the 5 Toastmaster top tips for public speaking. Number 1, purpose is power. Now, an irreverent quotation from Sir Winston Churchill on Lord Charles Beresford, a prominent admiral and member of Parliament in the early 20th century. This is what he said. He said, he is one of those orators of whom it is well said, before they get up, they don't know what they're going to say. When they're speaking, they do not know what they are saying. And when they have sat down, they do not know what they have said. So therefore, welcome guests, your speech should have a clear purpose from the beginning. It can be to inform, entertain, persuade, or even inspire your audience. So define the purpose and objective of your speech. So you've got to simply ask yourself the question, after listening to my speech, I would like the audience to, and you fill in the gaps. The clear purpose of my speech, is to give you the basic fundamental principles of public speaking to help you improve your communication skills, not just to a small or large audience, but it should also help you with everyday one-to-one conversations. I've decided not to use PowerPoint for my presentation today, as I want to make it easier for you to focus on what I'm saying and conveying, not just orally, but by gesture, body language, and facial expressions. These are key principles of public speaking that I shall explain in more detail in the next sections. PowerPoint is clearly a useful tool, but too often the audience can become conflicted in a presentation. Do I read the screen text or watch the speaker? We can't do both at the same time. So when I do use PowerPoint, I prefer to show large, clear images with short captions, T-shirt captions, as cues for each section of my speech to enhance my message with its clear purpose rather than distract from it. So my own view is that fewer impactful slides, each made real with your personal unique story, is far more interesting than acres of text-heavy slides. That may cause your audience to think that they can read all this stuff online, and of course they've got then the advantages of the pause and rewind button instead of attending your presentation. I've also decided against using props other than myself on this occasion for similar reasons. So number 2, Toastmaster top tips. Your body is a visual aid. Using your arms, hands, legs to illustrate or emphasize words, actions or events you are describing can be very, very powerful. So complement the words you use with relevant gestures. For example, using your fingers to count if you're listing words or processes. Purpose is power. Your body is a visual aid. The rule of 3. Your voice is a musical instrument, and slower is better. So gesture, body language can be really impactful even before you start speaking. Have you ever noticed a speaker commence their presentation before everyone in the audience has stopped talking? So the audience fails to engage properly from the outset of your speech, missing your opening sentences. Now, given that, as I've already explained, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression, it's not a great start. So how do you deal with that? Now, maybe it's because I'm an attention seeker, but to bring my live audience to attention, I pose like the figure of Christ the Redeemer, the colossal statue of Jesus Christ at the summit of Mount Corcovado, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Trust me, if you want the audience to be quiet and receptive, adopting this somewhat alarming pose does tend to work. So apart from looking a bit strange, you may have to explain that it's okay that you haven't got the new Messiah complex. But actually, it shows you're open, even vulnerable, which can be a very attractive quality in a speaker. You are open and you're prepared to be judged by your peers, your audience, rather than closed to the idea. So the classic body language, there's a multitude, but strength of purpose, thinking, come off it. I expect Boris has had this one. Open arms, unsure, don't know. And of course, the famous, my hero Churchill, V for victory. Have to be a little bit careful. If you get that round the wrong way, it can get you into a little bit of trouble. And it's quite remarkable that that sign, the wrong way round, was created by the English archers and bowmen at Agincourt. And so incredibly, almost 600 years later, that sign, go forth and multiply, is still in use on the fast lane of the M25 today. The other one that can be easily corrupted, you have to be a bit careful, is the OK sign. Yes, if you get that slightly wrong, you know what I'm saying. So try it, be careful with that one. But of course, there's some very powerful sign language. What about Alexei Navalny's incredibly powerful heart-shaped message to his wife through the prison bars? So all this, fellow guests, fellow Toastmasters, confirms Toastmaster research that over 60% of what we communicate is actually non-verbal. All clear so far? So, eye contact. If your audience can see you, you can see the audience, you can measure the impact of what you're saying. So now we're on to Toastmaster top tip, the rule of 3. Quite simple. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Our brains respond well to things in threes. Just think of the Holy Trinity, that universal rule of 3. Now, those of you who have read the introduction to this speech, your speech, according to Toastmaster top tips, may consist of 3 main sections: an introduction, a body, and a powerful conclusion. Toastmaster tips say the body should consist of 3 main points. Anything less is too little. Anything more makes following your speech more difficult. However, Toastmaster speeches are typically 5 to 7 minutes long. Well, it's clear this evening that I've extended the body of this speech from 3 to 5 points. Well, that's because you, my esteemed audience, have above average intelligence and exceptional powers of concentration. So well done. Neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, an approach to communication and personal development created by Richard Bandler and John Grinder in California in the 1970s. Now, I'm just taking a simple, small fraction of their work. But if you open your speech with a story introduction that intrigues and causes your audience to be keen to learn more about the things you're interested in, right through to the powerful conclusion. So you link up all the way through with your central theme. Quite a powerful observation back in the 1970s. And I will let you, my audience, be the judge of whether my conclusion is powerful and rewards your time investment in my presentation today. So number 4, Toastmaster top tip, your voice is a musical instrument. You vary both the tone and pace of your voice when speaking. Highlight key words within a sentence by speaking with a different tone, and key sentences within paragraphs by speaking more slowly. When incorporating dialogue, emphasize the characters' different voices to make it clear that this is dialogue. Well, I'm actually a Londoner, so I was born in London. So if I need to, I can lapse into a bit of quasi Cockney, and then I thought, it's what I thought. No, I mean, and then we had a visit to the factory from His Royal Highness Prince Charles back in High Wycombe, and we took him around the factory. It's an old Victorian workshops. Took him up to the cabinet making workshop, and there at the top of the stairs was Jeff Timberlake, the cabinet making foreman, with his white apron on. And it was the most surreal introduction I've ever given. I said, Jeff Timberlake, may I introduce His Royal Highness Prince Charles to you? And he went, oh my God, I don't know what to say. And Prince Charles said, "Come on, man, what is it you're doing here? You know, come on, tell you how you make this wonderful furniture." So try and get into a bit of character dialogue if you can. And all this, as I say before, and I repeat, you can practice in front of a willing audience at Toastmasters. So though we speak frequently during the day, a more formal speech requires extra attention to detail. In preparation for a more formal presentation, what can we do to prepare? The challenge is partly determined by the speaker's experience, background, and sometimes cultural influence, and of course, existing habits of speaking. So I go through the key describers of speaking. So timbre refers to the quality of the voice. Articulation, a measure of perceived intellect or education. That's how well we articulate. So how well and correctly we form our vowels and consonants using our lips, jaw and tongue, and our palate to form the sounds that are identified of speech. So if you think of Giles Brandreth, he's a brilliant articulator. So the next heading, diction and enunciation are other terms that refer to the same idea. Pronunciation. Proper articulation applied to a given word is that word's pronunciation. Pronunciation includes how the vowels and consonants are produced, as well as which syllable is emphasized. For generations, speakers depended on markings such as the International Phonetics Alphabet or similar dictionary symbols to discover or decide how words were officially pronounced. With online dictionaries now readily available, one only needs to look up a word, select play, and hear an audible recording of the official and precise way a word should be pronounced. So there really isn't an excuse for mispronouncing a word in a speech. A mispronounced word may obliterate a speaker's credibility, and the audience attention may be focused on the fault rather than the message. Dialect. Subtleties in the way we pronounce words and phrase our speech within a given language are evident in accents, regionalisms, and dialects. An accent refers to the degree of prominence or the way the syllables are spoken in words. So somebody from Australia might say under, whereas we would say under. A regionalism is a type of expression, as when somebody says, the dog wants walked, instead of the dog wants to go for a walk. Dialect is a variety of language where one is distinguished from others by grammar and vocabulary. And tone. Now, you all know my hero, Churchill. He had a very distinctive tone. He tended to talk in stanzas. I'll give a short example. What General Wagon called the Battle of France is over. And I expect that the Battle of Britain is about to begin. Upon that battle depends the survival of Christian civilization. So he actually wrote in verses, and he, of course, must be the greatest orator, certainly the greatest British orator. Projection, voice projection is the strength of speaking, whereby the voice is used powerfully and clearly. It's a technique employed to command respect and attention, as when a teacher talks to a class or simply to be heard clearly. I'm always getting told off because when I go to the loo in the restaurant, people can still hear me talking to myself, so I get told off when I get back to the table. I think my voice does tend to carry. The next way we describe the speaking voice pitch, the perceived highness or lowness of a voice. Fundamentally, it's an expression of physiology rather than psychology. Now, many years ago, before I learned how to do public speaking properly, I was invited to give a speech at the Worshipful Company of Furniture Makers, a very prestigious gig in Plasterers Hall in the City of London. And you can imagine what happened at Plasterers Hall. The whole company got rendered. Anyway, that's another story. But I got up to speak, and I got my notes like this, and I was actually shaking like this. And I said, good evening, good evening, good evening. And I started warbling. And I thought, where's that funny noise coming from? Hello, 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 hello. Because I was so hopeless at public speaking, I didn't know the basic principles. You see, public speaking is a bit like driving a car. You wouldn't get in a car and drive it without being familiar with the highway code. Public speaking is very similar. There are fundamental principles that are relatively simple, but if you know them and you practice them, then you can get better. So when I sat down after this hopeless speech, they all said, oh, well done, great speech, thank you. Why? Because they didn't want to give the speech. 70 people in evening dress in a magnificent hall where you could hear a pin drop. I ought to point out that, of course, when you get up to speak after dinner, it doesn't matter how much they've had to drink. They're all stone cold sober when you get up, and they clock every word and nuance that comes out of your mouth. So, word of warning. So, each of these things that I've just mentioned, tone, projection, pitch, enunciation, they depend on long-term practice for success. These aspects are like signatures and should be developed and used by each speaker according to their own persona. So all these can be varied to suit you. Very important point now, breathe. Talk without breathing, it can't be done. So if you're screaming like a baby, you are also breathing. So the first word of advice on speaking to an audience is breathe. Don't try and rush it. Try and calm down and remember to breathe. Now, at Toastmasters, we not only speak, we evaluate everything. It's most important. And we try and drive out the ums and ahs. We even have an counter. So we try to drive out the thing we all use, if we're not careful, in common parlance, ums, ahs, arums, ers, and dreaded filler words like I said, as you know, okie dokie. And of course, the footballer's classic, at the end of the day, Brian, there is nothing that takes away more from your speech than my name is Stewart Linford, and I want to. You glaze over by 2 minutes. You've had enough. Now, when I first joined Toastmasters many years ago, you give what's called the Icebreaker Speech. Generally, you talk about yourself. So I talk about my life. You don't need notes to remember your name, who you're married to. Hopefully you don't need notes to know how many kids you've got and what their names are. And I gave my 5-minute icebreaker speech, which I thought went really well. They all responded. Then I sat down, and all the feedback slips, of course, you don't get in real life, the feedback, what they actually thought of your speech, all these slips were handed back to me. And I was astonished. They said, great speech, well done. Pity we couldn't concentrate on you because you were sandwiched between the lectern and the whiteboard. I had no idea, didn't even consider it. So when you get evaluation feedback, it's very valuable because you start to understand all the things that you wouldn't understand without the help of a supportive audience. So number 5, slower is better. Incredibly important. The power of pause. So rather than ums and ahs, if you're thinking of what to say, try and pause, slow down. Speaking slowly shows more gravitas than speaking loudly. It additionally allows your audience to understand you more easily. A good speaking pace is 100 to 120 words a minute. So a 10-minute speech ought to be around 1,000, 1,200 words long. A lot of speakers new to public speaking try and rush through the speech. However, it is far more powerful to pause with each segment while your speech is absorbed. It's a bit like filling a champagne flute. If you pour too quickly, the precious stuff just overflows and much of your speech may not be heard or absorbed. So give your audience time to absorb what you're saying. So quick recap, finding the right pace for your speech. If you speak too quickly, the audience may get the impression you have nothing important to say. If you speak too quickly, the audience has a difficult time catching up and comprehending what you're saying. They need time to digest the information, so plan on periodic pauses. The audience might think you do not want to be there if you speak too quickly. Conversely, if you speak too slowly, the audience may think you are too tired to be presenting, or the audience can forget the first part of your sentence by the time you've got to the last. It happens, and they lose interest. And if you speak too slowly, the audience might think you're wasting their time by taking longer than is necessary to relay your message. So as a speaker, you cannot race with the audience nor drag their attention down. Like Goldilocks, look for the pace that is just right. Right, so let's recap on the 5 principles of public speaking. 1, purpose is power. The successful general knows exactly what he's trying to achieve. The one most important thing. So purpose is power when you're giving your speech. And I hope that you will be furiously getting your laptops out to write your speech and incorporating some of the things you've learned. So number 2, your body is a visual aid. As I said, some of the most powerful communication is non-oral. Nelson sent his historic message to the ships of the line during the Battle of Trafalgar. England expects that every man will do his duty. He sent it not by word, not by carrier pigeon, or he sent it by flag signal. And it's come down through the ages all the way from 1805. So number 3, the rule of 3, the Holy Trinity. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. Number 4, your voice is a musical instrument. Vary both the tone and pace of your voice when speaking, and enunciate. Number 5, slower is better. The power of pause. So, my esteemed guests, aim to light a fire under your audience and inspire them. Now, I do, as been mentioned, a number of public speeches. One of them is The Wicked Wit of Winston Churchill. So I dress up as Churchill with a 1940s suit, the waistcoat, the pocket watch, the Homburg. I even have a electronic cigar. And I was on the way to give a gig in the evening, and in the afternoon I went to my dentist to have a checkup, wearing this suit, wearing the Churchill suit. And at the end of it, they said, the dental nurse and the dentist, they said, "You look very smart. What are you doing?" So I said, well, rather preening myself, I said, "Well, can you guess who I am?" And the dental nurse folded her arms, looked back, looked me up and down. She said, "Are you Toad of Toad Hall?" And then she could see a tear forming in my eye, and she said, "Have I upset you?" And I said, "No, that's quite all right." So fellow guests, members of this venerable organisation, the Institute of Mechanical Engineers, it doesn't all go right. We're all on a learning curve. We're all trying to embrace learning and enjoy it, and we're on a journey. So I do thank you for listening. You've been absolutely brilliant. If you enjoyed my speech, my name is Stewart Linford, and if you hated it, my name is Susan.
So thank you very much, Stewart, for a very interesting and informative and humorous talk, and for the inspiration of ideas and things to try for us to try at our next presentations. Hopefully, we'll avoid death by PowerPoint. Additionally, thanks to the IMechE Bedfordshire panel. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
Thank you very much, Philip and Alex. Thank you. Good night.